World War II was the biggest and deadliest war in all of human history. It was a global conflict that lasted from 1939 to 1945, pulling in almost every country in the world in one way or another. This wasn't just a fight between armies on a battlefield. It was a total war that reached into the homes and hearts of ordinary people everywhere. The echoes of its battles and the shadows of its decisions still shape the world we live in today, on this very day, August 16th, 2025. It began not with a single gunshot, but with a slow, creeping darkness that spread across nations, fueled by old wounds and new, dangerous ideas that promised greatness but delivered only ruin. The story of why the war started is complex, with its roots buried deep in the aftermath of the First World War. That earlier conflict, which ended in 1918, was supposed to be the war to end all wars. Instead, it left a legacy of bitterness and economic hardship. Germany, defeated and forced to sign the Treaty of Versailles, felt deeply humiliated. The treaty demanded that Germany accept all the blame for the war, pay enormous sums of money, and give up large parts of its territory. This created a powerful sense of injustice among the German people, a feeling that someone, someday, would have to correct. In the years that followed, the world plunged into a severe economic crisis known as the Great Depression. People lost their jobs, their savings, and their hope. In this climate of fear and uncertainty, powerful new leaders rose up in several countries. In Italy, Benito Mussolini created a fascist government. In Germany, Adolf Hitler and his Nazi party came to power. They promised to restore their countries to their former glory, to make their people strong again, and to reclaim what they believed was rightfully theirs. They used simple, powerful messages that resonated with people who felt lost and forgotten by the world. These new leaders were not interested in peace or cooperation. They believed in strength, in conquest, and in the idea that their nations were superior to others. Hitler, in particular, had a vision of a vast German empire, and he began to rebuild Germany's military in secret, directly violating the terms of the Treaty of Versailles. Other countries, weary from the last war and struggling with their own economic problems, watched with growing concern. They hoped that by giving in to some of Hitler's demands, they could avoid another terrible war. This policy, known as appeasement, only made him bolder and more determined to achieve his goals. As the world edged closer to war, nations began to form alliances, choosing sides in the coming conflict. On one side were the Axis powers, a group of countries led by an ambition for empire and military domination. The main Axis countries were Germany, under the iron fist of Adolf Hitler, Italy, led by the fascist dictator Benito Mussolini, and Japan, which was controlled by a military government with Emperor Hirohito as its figurehead. These nations shared a common belief in aggressive expansion. They wanted to conquer their neighbors and build vast empires, believing it was their destiny to rule over others and control valuable resources. Germany wanted to dominate all of Europe, creating what Hitler called a Third Reich that would last for 1,000 years. Italy dreamed of building a new Roman Empire around the Mediterranean Sea. Japan, meanwhile, sought to control East Asia and the Pacific, creating what it called the Greater East Asia Co-Prosperity Sphere, though it was really an empire built for Japan's benefit. These three powers signed a formal agreement called the Tripartite Pact in 1940, officially promising to support each other. Their combined military might and their ruthless ambition set the stage for a conflict of unprecedented scale and brutality. Opposing them were the Allied powers, a diverse coalition of countries united by their determination to stop the Axis aggression. The major Allied powers were Great Britain, the Soviet Union, and the United States. They were often called the Big Three. Great Britain, led for most of the war by the defiant Prime Minister Winston Churchill, stood alone against Germany for a critical period. The Soviet Union, a communist nation under the absolute rule of Joseph Stalin, initially signed a non-aggression pact with Germany, but was forced into the war when Hitler launched a surprise invasion in 1941. The United States, led by President Franklin D. Roosevelt, tried to stay out of the war at first. Most Americans did not want to get involved in another European conflict. However, the country provided crucial supplies and support to Great Britain. Everything changed on December 7, 1941, when Japan launched a surprise attack on the American naval base at Pearl Harbor in Hawaii. This act brought the United States, with its immense industrial power and resources, fully into the war. The alliance between these vastly different nations, a capitalist democracy, a colonial empire, and a communist state, was one of convenience, but it was the key to eventually defeating the Axis. The war began in earnest on September 1, 1939, when Germany invaded Poland. Using a new, terrifying tactic called Blitzkrieg, or lightning war, German forces overwhelmed the Polish army with a combination of fast-moving tanks and devastating airstrikes. In response, Great Britain and France declared war on Germany, and the conflict in Europe had officially begun. For the next few years, the Axis powers seemed unstoppable. Germany conquered much of Western Europe, including France, in a matter of weeks. Only Great Britain, protected by the English Channel, held out against the constant bombing of its cities during the Battle of Britain. Several key battles became major turning points, shifting the momentum of the war in favor of the Allies. In the east, the Battle of Stalingrad, which raged from 1942 to 1943, was one of the bloodiest in history. The German army tried to capture the Soviet city, but was surrounded and ultimately destroyed by the Red Army. This catastrophic defeat marked the beginning of the end for Germany's campaign in the Soviet Union. In the Pacific, the Battle of Midway in June 1942 was another critical moment. The United States Navy sank 4 of Japan's best aircraft carriers, crippling its naval power and halting its eastward expansion across the ocean. The leadership of the main figures was crucial to the war effort. Winston Churchill's powerful speeches inspired the British people to never surrender, even when they stood alone. A fascinating fact about him is that he was also a talented painter and a Nobel Prize-winning writer. In the United States, Franklin D. Roosevelt guided his country through the Great Depression and then through the war, famously calling Pearl Harbor a date which will live in infamy. He was the only American president ever to be elected to 4 terms, a testament to the trust the people placed in him during those dark and uncertain times. Perhaps the most significant event in the European theatre was D-Day, on June 6, 1944. On that day, the largest amphibious invasion in history was launched as Allied forces from the United States, Great Britain, Canada, and other nations landed on the beaches of Normandy, France. It was a massive and costly operation, but it was successful. This invasion opened a crucial second front in Western Europe, forcing Germany to fight on 2 sides. From the west, the Allies pushed toward Germany, while from the east, the Soviet army relentlessly advanced, squeezing the Nazi regime in a final deadly vice. By the spring of 1945, the war in Europe was drawing to a close. Allied forces were closing in on the German capital, Berlin, from both the east and the west. Adolf Hitler, realizing his dream of a 1,000-year Reich had crumbled into dust, took his own life in a bunker deep beneath the city. On May 8, 1945, Germany officially surrendered, a day that became known as VE Day, for victory in Europe. Across the continent, celebrations erupted as people poured into the streets, relieved that the years of fighting, bombing, and occupation were finally over. But the joy was tempered by the immense destruction and loss that the war had left behind. Even with the victory in Europe, the war was not completely finished. The Empire of Japan continued to fight fiercely in the Pacific, refusing to surrender. American leaders believed that a traditional invasion of Japan would cost hundreds of thousands more lives on both sides. To force a quicker end to the war, the United States made a momentous and controversial decision. In August 1945, President Harry S. Truman, who took office after Roosevelt's death, authorized the use of a new and terrible weapon. An atomic bomb was dropped on the city of Hiroshima, and 3 days later, a second was dropped on Nagasaki. causing unprecedented destruction and death. Faced with this unimaginable power and the threat of more attacks, Japan announced its surrender on August 15, 1945. The official surrender was signed on September 2nd, bringing World War II to its final conclusion. This day was celebrated as VJ Day, or Victory over Japan. The world was finally at peace, but it was a profoundly changed place. Entire cities lay in ruins, economies were shattered, and tens of millions of people, soldiers and civilians alike, were dead. The war had also revealed the full horror of the Holocaust, the systematic murder of 6 million Jews and millions of others by the Nazis, a crime that forever stained human history. In the aftermath, the world struggled to rebuild and to ensure such a catastrophe would never happen again. The United Nations was formed to provide a place for countries to resolve disputes peacefully. Europe was divided between the democratic West, aligned with the United States, and the communist East, controlled by the Soviet Union, setting the stage for a new kind of conflict known as the Cold War. For ordinary people, life was transformed. New technologies developed during the war changed society, and the old empires of Europe began to crumble. The war was over, but its lessons about freedom, tyranny, and the incredible cost of conflict would be remembered for generations to come.